Drawing from Observation, Lesson 5, Drawing Volumes and Planes in Space. Before starting this lesson, please have the following materials ready: paper, sketchbook and sketchpad, materials, ebony pencil, pencil sharpener, eraser, and clock face template, subject, rectangular table, rectangular objects like books and boxes, including one with a label like a cereal box. It's important to keep track of assignments. Do each exercise in order in your sketchbook or sketchpad. On each page, write your name and the number of the exercise, for example, O-5A. Also, after doing the assignments, take photos of all pages of drawings as well as the subject if required. Watch for the photo icon indicating which subjects to shoot. This lesson develops your construction drawing and site measuring skills by applying them to rectangular objects. As usual, we'll warm up with some gesture drawings. Exercise O-5A, Warm-ups. Time, 2 exercises at 6 minutes and 4 minutes, so 10 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil and sketchbook. Subject, assorted rectangular objects. Start with your sketchbook and look around for some rectangular objects to draw: shoe boxes, cereal or tissue boxes, books, alone or in piles, laptop computers. Spend no more than a minute or two on each subject, then go on to the next. You'll have time to make 3 to 6 sketches. As you did with the bottles in the last lesson, draw each rectangular object quickly and freely, letting your eye roam around the form, letting your hand follow your eye. Begin sketching lightly, taking in the largest shapes, then adding details like labels and illustrations on the cover. Again, keep your eye on the object most of the time at first without worrying about how accurate the drawing is. After about 30 seconds, glance down at the paper to check the initial sketch against the object. For example, compare the proportion of the box's height to its width and the size of one side in relation to the other. Then make the changes, still drawing freely without erasing. As quick as these gesture sketches are, their real value is to help you observe more closely and see more accurately. This happens naturally when you compare your drawing, what you thought you saw, to the object you actually saw. Okay, start. and stop. The next warm ups use the same objects but handle them as construction drawings, breaking them down into simple geometric forms. In the case of the objects we're studying today, this may seem much too simple because they're already basic shapes, either squares or rectangles, but that's only when they're viewed straight on. Turn them at an angle, and you'll see their shapes change dramatically. Remember how you drew the bottles in the last lesson? You drew quickly, like a gesture, but used logic to analyze the form into its component parts. Here the components are the front, back, side, top, and/or bottom planes of the book or box. Again, sketch lightly at first to make it easier to make corrections, then darker as you make the changes. For this exercise, go back to the most challenging or interesting object you just did a gesture drawing of and draw it twice more from different viewpoints at 2 minutes each. Okay, start. and stop. In the last lesson, you learned one way of using sight measuring, working from an object standing straight in front of you. Here, sight measuring techniques will be applied to objects and parts of objects that appear to recede back in space. One difficulty when drawing something that is either projecting forward or back is that it looks shorter than it really is because of its position relative to the viewer. This is called foreshortening, and we see it all the time in art and in life. But foreshortening causes problems when we go to draw because of the issue we mentioned before, the tendency to draw what we know instead of what we see. Besides apparent changes in proportions, another problem when drawing an object projecting back or forward is that its angles change. Each corner of a box is a right angle and appears that way when seen straight on. But when the box is seen from a different point, these angles become more acute or obtuse depending on how they're viewed. In drawing, these angles are called angles of recession, and we must measure each one carefully, both to make the object look more realistic and to create convincing spatial effects, as in perspective drawing. Actually, you already dealt with these problems in the warm ups for this lesson just by drawing objects from different viewpoints. In the next exercise, you'll also learn strategies for measuring foreshortening and angles of recession, building on what you already know. You can often dispense with the full sight measuring process, simply measuring the shape of the object by eye. Even so, many artists still use sight measuring when they need to be absolutely accurate. Let's try it now with one of the objects you just drew, a book. Exercise O-5B, Sight Measuring Practice. Time, 10 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil and sketch pad. Subject, one thick book lying on a table, turned at an angle so you can see the front cover, the binding, and one of the sides. Start out this drawing with a quick, light, constructivist sketch, shaping the envelope around the book as a whole, then breaking it down to the shape of its separate surfaces. Next, do a more careful drawing over the first, correcting the initial sketch by using sight measuring techniques. As with the drawing of the lamp, hold the pencil straight up, stretch your arm out so your elbow is locked, close one eye, and place the pencil so it looks like the point is touching the far edge of the top of the book. Next, adjust your thumb on the pencil so it looks like it's touching the bottom edge of the front plane of the book. Now turn your hand sideways and compare the height of the envelope surrounding the book to its width. Use those proportions when drawing the object on the paper. To draw the edges going back in space, tilt the pencil you're holding sideways so it aligns with the angle of the edge, then transfer that exact angle to the paper. After the initial sketch, take time to measure and correct the drawing, checking everything at least twice so you get the shape of the envelope as close as possible to what you see. Also, use observation of negative space to help if needed. Once you've got the overall envelope down, break it up into individual planes, front cover, binding, and side, checking their proportions to one another, again by using sight measuring and negative space as needed. Okay, start. and stop. Now we're going to introduce another measuring tool, a clock face template. Hold the transparency up so you can see the book through it and align the angle of one of the edges with the vertical and horizontal axis. That is the vertical axis between 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock and the horizontal axis between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Compare the angle to the clock face. For example, does it angle towards the 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock, in between two numbers? Now take the clock face and place it over the drawing of the angle you just drew and correct if necessary. Use the clock face to measure and correct other angles, then continue drawing. If time allows, add details like the text on the front cover and spine, cover illustrations if any, indications of binding or tattered pages, etc. Okay, start. And stop. The next exercise takes sight measuring a step further, applying it to a flat surface like a desktop or tabletop. Here, the tendency to draw what you know instead of what you see may be even stronger than when you drew the book. To test this out, do a quick benchmark drawing, then use sight measuring and the clock face to correct the drawing. This process will also help you learn to see better. Do the drawing in the center of the page of your sketchbook. Don't draw too small, but leave room around it on the sides. Exercise O-5C, Tabletop Drawing. Time, 10 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil and sketchpad. Subject, tabletop. Choose any flat rectangular surface and clear everything off it. For now, don't look towards a corner. That'll make things too difficult. The edges closest to you and furthest away should both appear as horizontal lines. If it's a rectangular table, situate yourself so you're looking straight at one of the wide edges. Now do a 30-second sketch of just the surface, not the edge of the table, the legs, etc. Okay, start. And stop. Now look at your drawing. Did you draw what you saw or what you know about the table? Did you draw the proportions as they actually are or foreshortened as they appear from your point of view? Now use sight measuring to really check the proportions depth to width. Then use the clock face to check the angles. Now looking at the tabletop from exactly the same angle. Go through the process with arm outstretched and one eye closed. Be sure to keep your elbow locked as you compare the depth measurement, holding the pencil vertically, with the width measurement, holding the pencil horizontally. Next, use the clock face template to check corners. Take your time making these corrections without erasing and using darker lines to correct the original ones. When you're done, notice if you now see the table differently. Okay, start. And stop. After you've corrected the tabletop, develop the drawing by adding the edges of the table and the legs underneath as you see them. If time allows, continue drawing, adding things behind the table, next to it, or on the floor. Okay, start. And stop. To conclude this lesson, we'll do one more drawing of the table, this time with a box on it. Select a cereal box or a similar box about the same size. The box should have labels and illustrations on it to add interest and challenges. Exercise O-5D. Time 20 minutes. Materials ebony pencil, sketch pad, eraser, pencil sharpener, clock face template. Subject box on tabletop. Begin as you did last time with the lamp drawing. Start with a simple construction drawing, lightly sketching in the whole shape of the arrangement, tabletop and box all together. Then break it down into two secondary shapes, the shape of the table and the shape of the box on it. Try to use the shape of one to help correct the shape of the other. Then use sight measuring and the clock face to check and correct the tabletop as well as each plane on the box. Also, use the negative space surrounding the box to help you place it more exactly on the table. If the upper part of the box extends past the tabletop, draw the shape of the space above the box and the table that surrounds them both. Then draw the negative space carved out of the table by the box. Continue drawing as long as time allows. If you have time, add labels and illustrations to the box, but try to make their lines follow the angle of the surface they're on. Okay, start. and stop. The idea behind these lessons is simple. Just draw what you see. The reality is, you have to test and check what you think you see all the time. Actually, that rule applies to whatever you think you see, whether drawing or not. Before you quit for the day, check that each page of drawings is labeled with your name and the number of the exercise. Also, make sure you've taken photos of each page of drawings and, when it's indicated, of their subject too.